Big Daddy Linux is sponsored by UpCloud, which can provide you with superior cloud hosting and cloud infrastructure with unrivaled performance with their Max IOPS technology. Sign up using the promo code Big Daddy Linux, which gives you $25 worth of credit along with a 7-day free trial to see for yourself the UpCloud difference. And welcome to another BDLL special Europe edition for Saturday, July 13th. How's everybody doing?
Hi, everybody.
Yay!
I'm doing pretty crisp.
Very well, thank you.
Fine, thanks.
Pretty crisp, huh, Pizza?
Yes, I'm doing pretty crisp.
Can we get a confirmation in chat that the sound is good and everybody else is...
Sound appears
All right.
to be good. I'll listen to it.
Seemed okay to me when I was listening in, yeah.
All right. Awesome. All right. So the reason, some people may know, some people may not, but the reason that we do the Europe edition once a month on the second Saturday of the month is because the normal BDLL is at 8 p.m. My time, which is Eastern Standard Time. And, well, actually, it's Daylight Savings Time now. But anyway, we have it because obviously that's a little bit late in Europe for these guys. And so it would be nice to allow them to be able to talk and interact and join the community at a time when they were actually awake. So that's why we do the Europe edition.
Sounds good to me. Although I will be there at 1 o'clock.
You will be there. You're there. But guys like Yannick don't want to show up at 1, 2 p.m. or 1, 2 a.m.
When I were behind Zeb.
I don't blame you, Yannick. I don't know if I would show up for the 1, 2 a.m. show. So. All right. So this week we tried Debian 10 Buster. Mm-hmm. And I installed it on the test machine. And I will reserve my judgment for later. But we're going to continue on. Tony, did you get to try Debian 10?
Yes and no.
Okay. Please explain.
I ran it on a pen drive for a while, and then I tried to install it. Black screen on reboot, flashing cursor. After the third different way of trying to install it and getting the same result, I did a Zeb next. And that's about it, really.
So Debian 10 was a success, right?
It might be for somebody, but it wasn't for me.
Fair enough.
So quick question, Tony. Are you using Nvidia?
No.
Oh, okay.
Intel graphics only, surprisingly.
Wow.
I couldn't understand why I couldn't get it installed.
Well, I can't help you there, brother. I'm sorry.
It's no great loss.
Big Pod.
Well, I got it running first try on my laptop, which is normally a big success since Nvidia and Nvidia drivers or Nuevo don't like the graphics card in my laptop, so that's a big success running it first time. But next thing I found out is the graphics card isn't working. Not graphics card, the network card isn't working. And while I could get it working, probably I haven't really put time in it. And I found out that the module the module for it isn't even in that kernel. By default, there isn't. And it was supposed to be added in later kernels. So, yeah, network Wi-Fi doesn't work. So, some stuff works, some stuff don't. Another problem is VirtualBox, which is kind of hard to install since you have to use Ubuntu's repositories to actually get it working. But it ran.
So basically, you got it to install. It runs fine. You just have issues with certain programs.
Yeah, it's installing VirtualBox and getting Wi-Fi to work.
All right. Well, that's actually similar to my situation. I installed it on the test machine. The installer went perfect. I didn't have any issues whatsoever. Got to the desktop, installed the main version of it, so it would be XFCE, and it works great. I mean, for using it this week, I didn't like use it a ton, but for what I did use it for, I didn't have one crash, one problem with it, except for trying to install certain programs, or maybe not so much trying to install certain programs, but trying to get them to actually run. So like, for example, Google Play Music desktop player. I was able to install it after installing a few dependencies, but then it had some library issues that were not there and was not able to actually open up the program to run it. So, and this I find a few times with Debian, before when I tried it, and now. So it's not like it's a bad system. It's a great system. And I realize why people enjoy it so much, because it is stable and it is set up very nice. It's just for certain programs, I ran out of time trying to figure out what the dependencies were it needed and what everything was going wrong with it. So, Eric, what did you think?
I think that, Debian is sort of like one of those death and taxes sort of things, where it's there, and even when there's a new release, it's really more of the same, which is a good thing, right? Because the whole point of it is they put a high emphasis on stability and being able to run it anywhere. And I think where that fails for me personally is that they don't put a lot of emphasis, I think, on the little touches that make using it as a desktop system a little easier. And if you think back to the history of like Ubuntu and other Debian.
Someone let Thomas in.
Yeah,
Not yet.
in spirit. You think that that's exactly what they sort of did in a way, right? They extended out, they used that very solid base that was dependable, reliable, glacial in some respects, and added some creature comforts on top of it. And I still feel we're in that same exact situation all these years later, where if you run Ubuntu, or if you run anything that's Debian based, you know what you're getting. And so when you run Debian, you're running essentially what you've been running, but you notice the things that aren't there that would be there from Ubuntu or any of those. And that's really the feeling I got. Was it installed fine, ran fine, the desktop environments are clean. I used the net installer so that I could try a couple of different desktops, and they all work fine. They look great. Everything's there, all the tools. There's a couple little things that, the ESR version of Firefox and
Yep.
some little things like that are just, again, really refinements that other distributions have made on top of it. So there's nothing to complain about. It's fantastic. I when it came out, I said on Twitter, like, to me, it's got to be one of the greatest open source projects ever. It's existed for this long. It continues to exist. They have not compromised their principles. They haven't had to go through any major drama. Like, it's amazing that they do what they do and continue to do it as well as they do.
Yep, and that all goes back to, like you mentioned about Firefox ESR, but that's partially the whole philosophy thing.
Absolutely.
So, you don't have the latest and greatest like you would on say, Ubuntu, but you have that whole philosophy of stability and tested, and so yeah,
it's all good stuff. It really is.
All right, Joe, sir.
Hi. Well, I did install it in a VM earlier in the week and was not having. The install went good, but the VM didn't like it. It was stuttery and things like that. And I literally just installed it when I jumped into the room here. So I haven't had a lot of time to spend on it. I did pick the cinnamon version because I'm running mint cinnamon, and I wanted to kind of compare notes with them and see how they went. I'm hoping to be on the show tonight to the later biddle, so I can maybe play with this a little bit today. I'm going to apologize. it's been hard for me to do these distro challenges each week lately because we've got a lot going on in our lives right now, which is taking away from this. But I want to come on. If nothing else, like I've told you, to see these guys. I know there's no obligation.
You
But
don't have to apologize, man. You try them when you
know
can,
what?
when
Quite
you have
honestly, there's
time.
a couple times I've sat out of the shows on a Saturday night because I felt guilty. I feel like for me, I want to do this because I know it's important to give the developers feedback and things like that. But truthfully, like I said, even this, the install went beautifully. I did use the graphical installer. It was fine. The worst thing I have to remember for myself is when you put your login name and the initial screen comes up after you reboot, you have to do the lowercase, because I have a tendency always wanting to type capital first letter, and then it keeps saying the wrong password or entry or whatever, and then I go, oh, you gotta go. So, I mean, so as far as a report on it, I can't give you anything, super detailed here right now, but I do want to play with this a little bit in the next few hours to try to see if I could, because on a laptop, compared to some of you guys, I don't have a lot of things I have to deal with, other than maybe if I want to put Zoom on here or try to run it tonight a little bit or whatever, or those kind of things that I would use on here normally. I use onboard graphics, so I don't have an Nvidia card in here or anything special that way. But
sure, rub it in, Joe.
well, no, I'm not saying for that. There's a side to me that wishes I had a separate graphics card in here for that reason. Because then,
Careful.
Yeah, careful what you
yeah,
wish
I know,
for
be
there.
careful what you wish for, right? So, but
well, you mentioned, Joe, the login screen, and that reminded me of one thing that it does not, like a normal Ubuntu distribution would remember your login username at least, and you fill in the password. But Debian, when you boot into it, you have to input the username.
Yeah, and the thing is that's one thing that in you saying that is, most of the distros will say, do you want to log in automatically or not? And there's no option for that during this. It's not like it's a big deal. But again, I just felt for me, the best test for this would be the same flavor of what I'm running every day, because then I can kind of compare notes. So, but what I see so far, it's clean and polished and looks a lot like what I'm running right now. So.
All right. Jill, how are you?
Yes. Oh, very good. Very good. And sorry, I was distracted a little bit earlier.
That's okay.
So, Debian is actually my favorite distro. And because it is the Swiss Army knife of all the distros, it works on everything. It works on my RISC hardware, on my CISC hardware, on my DEC Alpha, my Sun Spark, my 386s, my 486s, and single board computers, and embedded in the Internet of Things. So I have over 100 computers in this room, and Debian is on most of those. Yeah.
So like, have you installed it recently? Like, I mean, did you install 10?
Yes, I did. I did.
And what do you think? I mean, is it worth the upgrade or what?
Yes, definitely. Just because of, having just all the packages upgraded is huge. And I actually installed Debian 10 on my 3-monitor gaming rig, the other one I have in the hall. And it worked beautifully, like every other Debian distro before it. Didn't have an issue. I have a GTX 1050 Ti on that machine, and it was just fine. And I actually, but for the first time, I did use the Calamari's GUI installer. That was the first time I'd ever used it under Debian. And that worked beautifully. And I actually tested the live USB. I wanted to test GNOME with Wayland on Debian, because that was very, very new.
Right.
And yes, so now we have the new faster known desktop 3.30. So that made a big difference. It was, like double the speed from the previous release of Debian. So that was really awesome.
Well, I know at least on this, Debian just, barring any of the program issues that I had, it just has that feel about it that is comfortable.
Yes.
And I don't know exactly how to put that into words other than saying it just feels comfortable. And I mean, I don't know. That's all I can basically say about it.
Well, you know what? Because of that genealogy, that history of Debian being, the platform that most of our favorite distros are based on. That's probably why, all the Ubuntu's, Pop! OS, all the Ubuntu derivatives, and many other derivatives are based off of Debian.
So Jill, are a lot of your machines server, like headless machines?
I have both. I have some headless machines I use for rendering, for animation. And then I have workstations that I use for doing animation and
my fondest memory of Debian is it's such a good server platform because it's glacial, and once it's running, unless there's a hardware fault. And I had a file server that ran continuously for, I don't know, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
It just never stopped.
Yeah. And what's also awesome about it is it works beautifully with all the other OSs, on the network. I have a render farm, so I have Debian, I've got OpenSUSE, I've got CentOS, and they all work just beautifully together. And Debian is really good about that.
Fantastic.
Cool. Sounds really good.
Yeah.
Okay, Yannick, welcome to the show. Good to see you again, my friend.
Thank you.
So how did you find Debian? Did you get a chance to try it?
Does the Raspbian edition of Debian count? Because no, I didn't. I just tried Raspbian on the Raspberry Pi, but I didn't have time to test proper Debian.
That's okay. It's as we've all said, it's not a prerequisite. It's only if you've got the time, because real life takes control. So, Pizza, I know you tried Debian. Come on.
Yes, and I
Tell
did
us
not
about
like it. So I made the mistake of using I made the mistake of not using the non-free ISO on my Nvidia system. So I got it installed, and then I spent like 2 hours trying to get Nvidia drivers work, and I finally got Nvidia drivers to work, and then I spent like another 30 minutes trying to get Steam running, and then it ran fine. But then I actually got a new computer, and well, I kind of got a new computer. What I did is I got a new case, a new motherboard, a new CPU. I doubled my amount of RAM, and I got I think I got another upgrade that I can't remember. But I used the same hard drives and the same power supply and stuff like that. So I put in my old Debian hard drive, and I noticed that it ran really slow after my upgrade. And then I tried to record on it, and I realized that hardware rendering wasn't in OBS. So I was just like, I just gave up, and then I booted in my Arch hard drive, and actually everything worked on my new hardware on Arch. So I'm on Arch now again.
Right. So, Jill, any tips that he can do to get his Debian disk working again? What would you suggest? A reinstall or?
Yeah. I would just go ahead.
I'm just gonna have to. I'll just have to do a reinstall. I just wasn't in the mood to reinstall it. And the other thing is, I do not like their decision to switch to Wayland for GNOME now. That seems like a very weird decision for them, because Wayland is still in development. Like, screen recording still doesn't work in Wayland, so I don't know why they chose Wayland over Xorg for GNOME. Another modification I did is, after I got GNOME running, I decided to install a Budgie desktop. And Budgie is a native package inside of the Debian repositories. So I didn't have to add any extra repositories. However, Budgie just ran really weirdly. Like, for example, the wallpapers that came with Debian, they all had weird images instead of the wallpapers. It was just a weird corrupt image when I tried it in Budgie, and then the same wallpaper would work completely fine in GNOME. So I don't know why that happens. I just had a lot of weird bugs with Budgie, and I'm running Arch, and I'm not getting bugs with Budgie. So I know it's not an officially supported desktop, but still, it's kind of. I had a lot of issues with Debian 10.
Well, you mentioned about using the non-free. I actually used the non-free ISO on this machine here, and with the help of the guys in Telegram, including Adam, I was able to enable the repos that needed to be enabled, and then install the Nvidia drivers. So
I also had to get help from Telegram. I think somebody helped me. I can't remember who it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and pizza loving nerd. I'm I'm sorry. I was going to call you Pizza Dude because that's someone in our community. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's
Pizza
okay.
Yeah, you can go. It defaults to Wayland, but you can go back to Xorg.
Yeah, I just think it's a weird decision to default to Wayland, especially for Debian.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good point.
Debian's not known for keeping up with current technology in the Linux world.
Yeah. Well, like me, I usually don't use GNOME as my default anyways. I just wanted to test it out. I go back to Flexbox and Window Maker. I don't even bother with those.
No. GNOME isn't my favorite. It's just it has a lot of Budgie uses a lot of the GNOME stack.
They do, yeah.
When I'm installing Budgie, I always install GNOME first and then Budgie.
Oh, okay.
That's usually what I do.
Nice.
And my last issue is GNOME 3.30 is a huge improvement to before. However, I do wish it came with GNOME 3.32 because GNOME 3.32 for me has actually been less stable and less buggy than GNOME 3.30. And 3.32 uses even less resources. So I think it would have been a good decision for them to. It would have still been un-Debian-like of them to upgrade to 3.32. However, they upgraded to Wayland, so they might as well have an extra GNOME upgrade.
I was a little surprised by that myself, but I think they thought when I read through the mailing list that they weren't really quite ready and they didn't think it was quite baked yet.
Yeah. Anyways, that was my experience with Debian.
Lovely. Thanks very much indeed. So, Ben, welcome to the stream. I know you tried Debian because you've been chatting about it at various places. So how has your experience been?
A pain in the groin.
Ah, okay.
It was, okay. I didn't like the fact that it didn't come with the non-free stuff by default. I couldn't decide what GUI to go with that I hadn't tried already, so I went with Mate, for example. And it was fine. There was no gripes about that. But, I mean, in my opinion, it was easier for me to go with a vanilla Arch install than it was Debian. I know that sounds kind of contradicting, but, at least in Arch, I could get things done faster and in a more accustomed way that I knew than I could with Debian. I mean, I don't know if it's just because I'm not used to the way Debian does things or what, but for some effed up reason, I just couldn't get Debian the way that I wanted in a very quickly, timely manner than I did with Arch or something more advanced. But ironically, I did get it done, but it took me like at least an hour, if not more time, to get everything set up in Debian than I could in somewhere more extreme.
I think you'll find though, Ben, that's going to be the same for somebody going to Arch for the first time. Yeah, it took me 2 hours to install the first time I did it, and then the next time I did it in 40 minutes. And I'm sure if I did it and did it and did it and did it and did it again, I'd get it quicker. That'd be the same for you with Debian, I think.
I only did Debian like maybe 2 or 3 times now, and it still takes me a little bit of time because I'm just not used to the setup. I just
and with the open or the free software, non-free software, whatever you want to call it, that's the philosophy of Debian, is to choose open drivers first, but at least give you the ability to put them on.
Right. Well, Rocco, I did actually go with the non-free firmware drivers CD. And it still took
What
me
system do you have, Ben? Nvidia or?
It was on a virtual box, but I still tried it at least before I went to Arch on my Optimus laptop, and it was just a pain in the neck on an Optimus laptop because it didn't have that Optimus manager that Arch has on it, and I finally said, okay, I'm putting Arch on the main rig and doing Debian in a VBox, and that's where I left it. But
well, thanks very much indeed for that.
So mine was a somewhat of a flop, but not so much. So that's where I left it. Yeah.
All right, PZ. What do you think, Debian 10?
Well, first of all, I want to pick up on something that Pizza Loving Nerd said about Wayland being a strange choice. Yes, it is, but I also applaud them because unless distributions start doing it, I'm sorry, Wayland is never going to get off the ground. Now, you all know I'm an Nvidia boy, so I've got Nvidia graphics here, and trying to get it to work with Wayland is incredibly difficult. But that doesn't matter because you can fall back to Xorg. But if we don't try it, if we don't submit the bugs, if we don't get the developers working on it, it's never going to come forward. And if you don't want GNOME, stick XFCE on, KDE, Budgie, Cinnamon, whatever you want. But those who want to do GNOME can do it and diagnose what they need to do to get Wayland working. Because I hear everybody saying it's absolutely fantastic. I'll let you know when I see it working on my Nvidia machine. But until then, we've got to give these people a chance. And I actually applaud Debian for coming out from underneath that rock and saying, there you go, Wayland, get on with it. Let's see what we can do with it.
I agree.
Yeah, agree. So 100% too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now on to my experience.
All that said,
that was the good.
So Sunday morning, after about an hour, it was next.
Really?
Because rather sillily, I chose the GNOME version, having forgot that they've gone Wayland. And rather sillily, until Chicken reminded me, I didn't use the net install. Because either of those don't work properly when you've got an Nvidia driver. Now you can get to your command prompt, you can nano etc sources.list, and you can put in and I always forget which it is, plus non-free. I forget which the first one is you add. There's two of them you've got to add, aren't there?
Yeah.
You've got main. What's the second one? Come on. Come on. Main something.
Contrib.
That's what it is. Contrib.
So you put all of those in, and I'd already read that they're doing the 418 drivers. Great, I'll have some of that. They're already on the 419 kernel. I thought, great, yeah, we'll have some of that. Black screen, blinking cursor. And I'm like, really?
Not even a terminal? Because who needs a DE anyways?
Not even a terminal. So I get into Telegram and I post all these pictures and I go next. And then, as I say, Chicken comes along, and it was actually Pete Dennett who reminded me, what did you pick GNOME for? They've gone Wayland. So I go back to the net install it, do all the fiddling about I have to do with Nvidia. Boom, a desktop. I'm on XFCE. Right, no sudo, so I've got to mess with that. No sudoers, so I've got to mess with that. Do you know what? I can't be bothered. Debian is a distro that once you've got it installed and once you've got it working, forget about it. It'll work forever. You'll update it, it'll run, it'll work forever. As long as you don't want the latest and greatest of everything, and you just want a machine that works day in, day out, for the next 10 years until they bring the next Buster out, whatever it's going to be called now. What do we know what the next one's called now, Jill?
I believe it's Bullseye.
Bullseye. There you go. So it'll be 10 years before Bullseye comes out. But in that 10 years, Buster will just keep working. You'll still be on Firefox ESR 56 or whatever it is. But hey, it's the web. It works.
But see, there are use cases for that, for people that love that. That's all they're looking for in a system.
Yep. But now let me tell you the really strange thing, yeah? OBS works, Steam works, Firefox works, and I get 143 frames a second out of the Rise of the Tomb Raider demo. That's as good as OpenSUSE Tumbleweed gives me. And I'm on the 430 drivers and a later kernel. So there's nothing wrong with rock solid stable Debian. For me, Debian is the distribution that's a lot like Arch. Yeah, it's quite difficult to install. Once you've got it installed, you've got to make it your own by doing lots and lots of different things to it. Yeah, you've got to go out and find out where you put your username in and your password in and tell it to just boot me in automatically. The reason why it doesn't put your username in and doesn't remember it is it's a security feature. Anybody walking up to your desktop has got to remember your username and your password. not just your password. But it's very easy to fix. I can't remember the name of the file now. It'll be, I don't know, something like lightdm.conf if you're using XFCE. You go in there and you tell it that the auto boot user is Zebedee, and it will go straight in there and work. So you've got to do a lot of messing around with it. But once you've got it messed around and you've got it set up, it's a great rock solid distro. However, exactly the same as Arch, for me, what's the point? MX Linux, brilliant. Q4OS that's on Debian 10, brilliant XFCE, even though it couldn't see my camera tonight. But hey, that's another issue. That's an issue, I think, more with the Elgato Cam Link than because the webcam works. It's just not my fancy new camera that I got, the same as Ryan. So why bother struggling setting all this stuff up when there are lots of distributions out there built and based upon Debian 10 that will just work for you, and they'll work forever?
I could see it more from like an enterprise standpoint, where you need that stability and rock solid component, right? So you say, this is my image for my desktop. I could see it more from like an enterprise standpoint. I'm going to deploy that to 100, 200, 1,000 machines, and I know that it's going to be that way from now until, you know, the end of time, essentially. So that's really where. So again, I agree completely with you, where I think it's the way that we use computers and the way that a lot of desktop computer users use computers are probably not going to appreciate that amount of stability, because it is the antithesis of a rolling release.
But even whittling that down, Eric, you have users that just want to put the system on and not have to worry about stability issues in the future.
Any kind of server application, any kind of workstation application where you've got a set release of a tool, you know, a particular program, and that program runs really well, and you just know it runs well. Yeah, that it's wonderful for that. Absolutely. But what I'm saying is, you and I and the rest of this group here that are looking at new and different things, you're going to get frustrated on a distribution.
If you're looking for the latest and greatest, Debian is probably not your best choice. But what I'm saying is there are users out there for desktops that want that stability. And, you know, they don't mind going through the whatever it takes to customize it once to have an install for a couple years. It's just not me. I mean, but
Just think if you're supporting Great Uncle Ned, you go there, you install it, and you go back 5 years later and go, is it all right? And they go, yes, mate, it's working perfectly.
Yeah, I was going to say I could put that on my parents' computer, because you know they're like 8 hours drive away. So if I could have something stable for 10 years, then I could do that. Yes,
exactly. So for me, although it's not for me to use, and I would rather use a distribution based on it, Debian 10 gets a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, awesome.
Nice. Joshua, are you there, sir?
Maybe.
Okay.
So I'll tell you the story of why I'm here first of all, and then I'll explain my Debian story.
Your Debian story, otherwise I'm going to mute you.
For being too much like Thomas.
Oh, come on. Okay, so as I was saying, I decided, okay, let's go to the pool. And then my friend was taking like forever to change into his bathing suit. And then I went on YouTube, and then I saw that you guys were live. I was like, wait, what the hell? So I decided to move in and be like, ahem, Dr. Random is here. Everybody get your guns out, because an American is here. This is Europe edition.
But we've got lots of Americans on there. But anyway, how did you find Debian?
And I know my story. Okay, so here's Debian. It's still the classic Debian. It's optimal, and it asks for way too much. It's a tiny bit like Arch, but it's still a great operating system. But I noticed something new with Debian. I realized that you guys all saw that in Ubuntu 19.04. It was a lot more faster and more efficient. But then I realized that Debian was more efficient too. So I think that part of Ubuntu becoming faster, since it is built on Debian unstable, is just an effect from what's happening here. And I think that's kind of cool. I think that Zeb really wants to know this, so I'll just say it real quickly. The cinnamon version is 3.88, and it's like, come on, this is it's 2019. You know, Trump already crossed into North Korea. Come on. The newest version is 4.2 for bug fixes. Come on.
But this is Debian, and that's what Debian does. It will get 4.2 in about 4 years' time, maybe.
Yeah.
That's
definitely. We wasted 5 years of our life waiting for this version. Okay.
No, you would have had 5 years use of a perfectly stable, good computer.
Yep.
You want all your lovely bells and whistles. As a developer, that's the exact opposite case to what Eric was saying Debian is for. So, yeah.
Yeah,
you can't knock software choice.
I would say it's great for pretty much all the uses, except that I wouldn't really probably use that as a home computer. But I would say that it's pretty known. It's a great reason to understand why so many Linux distros choose Debian as their big base, using dpackage and apt. I think that we can't just still let go, even though it might seem like it's still living in the 80s. I think we should still embrace it too. And I'm going to go swimming. Bye, guys.
All right.
Bye, Joshua.
Have a nice splash. See you later.
I'll stay in the area if I come back early.
Hey.
Wow.
Is it chlorine?
That was cute.
I don't know.
All right. So basically, it's safe to say that Debian is a great choice for a desktop for those who want stability and want and buy into that philosophy of open source software and running packages that they don't mind being a little bit out of date. They'll sacrifice the out of date or up to date packages for stability. So.
Yeah. Well, what Joshua was saying about, it was kind of funny because he contradicted himself a little bit, because the reason that Debian is stable is so that the other distros can develop on top of it.
Yeah.
And there's actually somebody in chat who's made a very good choice, a very good statement. If you want the latest and greatest, why not just put a snapper on an app?
Yep.
Yeah. And also it still supports 32-bit. Everyone, that's a huge thing.
Right. For those that have the 32-bit computers,
me on 32 bits.
it's a choice.
And yeah, for people like, for instance, in third world countries, I help support Kids on Computers, which brings computers to third world countries and sets up labs for underprivileged children. And they're always Debian based. And that's, that's the reason why it supports the older hardware.
Right. Well, for those that try the non-free and want to get the NVIDIA drivers, basically what steps I had to take with the help of Adam was to add the repos, which are the non-free and the contrib, and then use the sudo app install NVIDIA drivers, and then they were fine.
And then don't forget the NVIDIA settings as well, because it doesn't do that automatically.
Right.
Yeah.
But Zeb, do you find that you change the NVIDIA settings often? Like on this install, I didn't even install the settings. I used to change things in there, but I haven't been lately.
Due to my rather unique setup of two 4K monitors and a 1440 monitor scaled, no matter what I do and where I save it, I have to make sure that the NVIDIA settings match how it's, because it's really weird as well. It doesn't always say data port 2, data port 4, data port 0. For some strange reason, different distros muck them up. So I have to go in there every boot and make sure they haven't switched them around, because then I've got an NVIDIA Start SH, which says, put that at 0, put that at 3820, put that one at 9,000. And by the way, scale this 1.5. So yeah, I have to go in there quite a lot because of my weird monitor setup. Because when I then play games, I put this monitor back to 1440. Otherwise, a 1920 window on a big 5120 wide screen looks a bit silly, and I'm sort of sitting there squinting trying to play Euro Trucks, and it just doesn't work. So yeah, I mess around with the settings all the time.
So we're just going to start calling you Dark One then, because you got such a weird setup.
Only with the monitors. Okay. Only with the monitors. The rest of the kit is fine.
I always have to go into the NVIDIA settings and then disable flipping because it gives me screen tearing when I'm recording.
That is true.
Screen tearing.
But if you do a script, there's a script that you can put in the deconf that'll take care of that. And it was Slim that was the one that pointed out that Slim did a video on it. It's a slow video when he talks through it, but it's perfect. And ever since I put that in there, boom, it's, you do a deconf edit file in there and it's fine. It takes care of it and it maintains it every time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm like Zeb. I have to use the NVIDIA settings because of multi-monitor support and the way I play my games. And also I have I like to use the brightness settings on, different for every monitor. So
right. Well, see,
real handy.
This is a different setup. Like before getting the new computer, I had one computer with 2 monitors. So at that time I did use the NVIDIA settings a lot to set things and whatnot. But on the test machine, I only got 1 monitor. I have games, like I have Steam that I install sometimes. I have a good video card in it, but I don't have enough time to actually test games on it when I install something new. So I don't find that I install the NVIDIA settings all that often. And I guess in general, the testing of it is different because of the 2 different scenarios. So, Dan, sir.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
I'm fine. This is the first time I've used the Debian with the Zoom, so I'm kind of just gluing it together.
Wait, before we go any further, is Dan the only one here using Zoom on Debian? Yes. Okay, I just want to say that.
That's why I wanted to join, because I've had a lot of time to play with it.
Cool, Dan.
Well, I would have been here if I'd have been bothered to plug in my old Logitech camera, but because I was running Q4 OS. And for those of you who haven't run Q4 OS, you load it up, you boot it up, you get straight into the first screen, and it goes, "Oh, you've got an Nvidia card. Would you like us to install it for you?" You go, "Yes, please." You go reboot and you're Nvidia. That is what they should all do. "Oh, you've got an AMD card. Well done. You don't need to mess about. It's in the kernel." It should be that way on every distribution. If Q4 OS can do it, why can't the others?
Now, Zeb, does it actually talk to you and say that the way you just said?
On the screen, yeah. It's Debian 10 based, so if you want it to talk to you, it will do.
Yeah.
It's the only installer that I think I've ever seen that when you first fire it up, there's a bit at the bottom that says, "Would you like us to talk you through these instructions?"
Oh.
How you're supposed to see that if you're blind and you want it to do that, I don't know, because you've got to move your mouse and click a button. So maybe I'm missing something there. Maybe there's instructions that you would read to tell you keyboard shortcut to fire that off. But it's there. Again, I've not seen it on any other distribution.
The one thing that I'd say, going back to maybe kind of what Eric's point was when he's talking about servers and stuff, from somebody who's never been on Linux, to do this installer, I think it would be just a little bit daunting. For us, it's easy because we're kind of used to it.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is Chris Titus put out a really nice video kind of walking you through step by step if you want to install it. So even if you're brand new to Linux, a video like that or tutorial would be helpful. But for the person who has never seen it before and wants to come to this first, it's probably going to be a little bit nerve-wracking because they're not going to know what to select when it comes to networking and different things, or proxy, you skip over that or whatever. And
well, I mean, I agree that you wouldn't give this to a new user, but that would almost be up to the person suggesting it, that they wouldn't suggest. I mean,
right.
I don't know many people that are going to suggest to a new person try Debian.
Well, not necessarily even suggested, but a lot of people, yourself, Rocco, will make a decision based on watching videos or see some. And I haven't, all the videos that I've seen of people reviewing this, not one had said this is probably not the best choice for somebody coming to this for the first time, because if you're not familiar with it. Now, again, that being said, the way Chris Titus walked everybody through it, it would be easy peasy if you've got some idea of a little bit of technical. But if you're somebody that's 75 years old or 80 years old that's coming to a computer for the first time, no, even with that, I think it would still confuse them.
Dan, you got anything else you want to add?
I did it the hard way. Well, first, when it first came out, I downloaded the single, I think it was 300 megabyte image, and installed it in a virtual machine, and it turned out pretty good. I didn't have any issues with the virtual machine. It took the guest editions. I started playing with it, and I started adding software to it and stuff like that, and started really liking it. And I'm like, I'm going to put this on some real hardware and use it. So after a day went by, I went and I got the image and I put it in, and I had gotten some information from their website, and they had spoke of some things of non-free firmware issues, and that you needed to address that. Well, I put the net installer in, and I used the graphical installer, and it installed everything. When it was done, no video, just a blinking cursor. Well, come to find out, going through the installation logs and some of that stuff, I was missing an AMD video driver. Not an Nvidia, AMD. Who would think that, at this day and age with Linux? So what I did after that is I just basically cheaped out and got one of the non-free discs. I picked the Cinnamon one, and I downloaded that. And I installed that, and I got the Debian up and running. And after that, I spent a great part, a couple of days installing software. I used first I had to change the sudo user or install one. And I got some notes on how to do that and got that set up. I went and use the regular sudo app install for any of the software I wanted to see if it would get that. I set up the file, because I got this all in notes. It's hard for me to remember all this, where you actually go in and add the repositories and stuff like that. So I set that up from notes. And what I couldn't get, I downloaded either deb packages, or I downloaded tarballs and actually built the packages and installed them. For Firefox, if you want to install Firefox Quantum, you can download the tarball, and there's a couple of videos on the internet on how to do that, to either install it as part of your system or install it in your home directory as an independent entity of your home directory. I did run into an issue with the GDebi installer, the graphical one. When you click on it, it seemed to open, but when you wanted to install the package, it would drop out. I came up with a workaround for that. I don't know if it's the best workaround, but if you go into the users shared application folder and find the GDebi menu file, if you go in there and you change terminal from false to true, then the geographical deb installer will work properly. But keep in mind, when you do that, it brings up a terminal, and usually it's hidden behind it when it opens. And so you rarely see it. And
let me give you a really good tip, Dan, on that one that Popey gave me. Yeah. If ever you come across a distribution where the Debi doesn't work for some reason, sudo apt install / name the deb file, and it will go straight in.
Yeah, and I knew you could use the terminal to do that. Well, by going in and changing the feature in the file from false to true for a terminal, something in the terminal makes the graphical installer work
properly.
And that's the workaround I came up with if you want to use the graphical installer, because I want to also be able to use the remove portion of it. And when you got a pile of deb packages all in a folder file saved as deb packages, and you decide you want to remove one and you can't remember whether it's an app package or so on and so forth, it's kind of nice to just click on it. The graphical thing will tell you whether it's in there or not, and give you the option to remove it.
Well, how many people here, we all talked about installing it fresh. How many people here upgraded from a lower version of Debian? Okay,
Didn't have one installed, no.
so Steve, our friend from our email community, did do an upgrade, and I just wanted to put across that he did do an upgrade from Debian 9 to Buster, and it worked flawlessly. So that is another plus. Now, he kind of pulled a me and broke his system after that, but but he was able to do the upgrade process. So there you go.
Nice.
All right. So anybody else have anything they want to add to Debian?
Just keep up the good work and keep that solid base that we're all building upon.
Well, I think
I feel like that the optimal experience for Debian is not Debian itself, but using one of the derivatives from it.
Yep.
And like MX or even Ubuntu.
I can fight that argument on this note that I don't have a single Flatpak or snap package to my knowledge in my system.
Yeah, true. That is a benefit of Debian over Ubuntu. Although Linux Mint, it does support Flatpaks. However, it doesn't come with any out of the box. So
same for Peppermint. It supports Flatpaks and snaps, but none are installed out of the box.
Yeah, most Ubuntu-based distros that aren't Ubuntu itself do support snaps and Flatpaks, but don't come with any out of the box.
If they are an official Ubuntu flavor, they do.
Yeah, I'm saying most Ubuntu, like non-Ubuntu.
Yeah, any other derivatives, yeah.
Now, with the Debian, you do get a Synaptic Package Manager, but I haven't used it yet.
Oh, yeah. One thing I did like about Debian is the Ubuntu Software Center or the GNOME Software Center on pretty much all of the Ubuntu-based derivatives. It's just terrible. It barely works. However, it worked pretty well in Debian for me. So I think Ubuntu is probably modifying it, and it's affecting the derivatives downstream because I think they're modifying it with the snap support and stuff.
Now, that's really funny because when I was using Ubuntu, I used the GNOME installer and I wanted a piece of software and I tried to install it with that package manager. It actually installed the snap instead of PPA or something like that.
Yeah, you have to be careful because sometimes it'll install, it'll list it twice. And you have to physically go into it to have a look. Scroll down to the bottom and it will tell you whether it's a package or a snap or a Flatpak. So you just have to be careful.
Wait, Dan, did you have that issue on Ubuntu?
Ubuntu Mate.
Yeah, that's the issue. I think that Ubuntu should just get rid of. I think that they should make an option by default to have snaps, and then you could go into the settings and disable the snaps. That's what I think they should do.
I don't think they need the option to disable them. I think they just needed to clarify which ones are snaps and which ones aren't.
I think
I guess
a Snap Store app. I think for next version, where they will have the snap. I think I remember hearing that on the latest Ubuntu podcast, or maybe.
So will they strip them out of the GNOME Software Center completely and just have them in the Snap Store?
I think so.
That would be good.
I
make a conscious effort to.
I do always install the Snap Store though, because a lot of new applications that you can get a lot of applications through the Snap Store that you can't get any other way. And I like using the Snap Store to just discover new applications that I didn't know existed. Like there's this suite of applications called the Empire suite of applications. And there are a lot of cool applications that they made through snaps.
Well, snaps are, in contrary to what some people's opinions are, I believe they're a good thing for Linux in general. I just, like I said, I don't think you want the nuclear option of removing snaps or shutting them off, but I do think that it's a must to have them labeled so you know what you're installing.
Yeah.
Well, Brian,
here's a question for everybody then with regard to snaps, and it's the way forward, and we're all saying that it's the right thing to do. How long do we have to wait for the big boys to start building them? When are we going to get an Adobe Snap?
Well, I think you're already seeing certain companies.
We don't have a Deb from Adobe, so
like
But
Spotify
Snap,
is
they
one
make a Snap
company
and
to
it'll go in
mention.
they make a snap and it will go in a load of other Linuxes.
yeah.
It's never going to happen.
And building a
Wake
snap,
up.
building a snap is really a lot easier than building a deb file.
Wow, Brian Lunduke brought up a really good point about snaps.
No,
Canonical
Brian Lunduke
always...
doesn't bring up anything that's any good. He just brings up. Carry on. Yeah.
Wow.
Next.
Wow.
And Brian,
Somebody-
yes, you've got my email address. Send me anything you want, mate.
Well, what I was gonna say is Ubuntu always creates projects and then drops them. This has happened with Ubuntu Touch, Unity, the Mir. So Brian Lunduke said that they might do the same thing with snaps.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds a lot like Microsoft, what you just said.
That is such a. All companies do that. That is such a dumb argument. I'm sick of hearing it.
It's the norm of the century here.
Yeah,
no company says I'm going to build this software, and if it's not, achieving an objective I set forth for it, I'm just going to keep pouring money into it.
I think that's a terrible business decision if you do that.
Yes.
Look at Google.
You spend money for something that won't be even used, or it doesn't even serve an objective you set for it, so you trash it.
Right. I don't have a dog in the race, but Mir is not dead, by the way.
No.
Well, look, I mean, like this is just a company decision, and people say, oh well, they bring up things and then they drop them, but every single company does this because it's about making money.
It's called software.
And if you're running a business, if you're running a business, would you? Okay, you open up an ice cream stand, right? And you're selling vanilla and chocolate, and you offer strawberry, and you know what? Nobody likes strawberry. Are you going to continue buying strawberry ice cream? Of course you're not. You're going to drop it because it doesn't sell. So I don't think the idea of dropping things. Well, it is. I like strawberry ice cream. But.
All those companies, including Canonical, they are private companies, and they have no obligation to do anything else than care for their business.
And actually, I think it would be foolish for them to continue to support something that is detrimental, because that's bad. That's a poor business decision.
Yep.
So the thing with
30-qubit, for example.
Yeah. Here's my thing with Snap. Snap on servers, if you guys have done anything with server admin and use Snaps, they are amazing.
The best.
Absolutely.
Truly astonishing.
Yeah.
Like
I have used Snaps on servers. I think I used it to set up I set up something with it. I can't remember.
I bet it's Nextcloud.
So
it was Nextcloud. That was super easy.
So, and that's my point. So where the history of Snap is, it's coming from this very stable server-based platform with a lot of tight controls around security and access, and they're trying to extend that out into the desktop realm. You know, this latest controversy where they're going to put a Snap version of Chromium, that's smart on their part, because they have to maintain that back how many years for LTS releases. Packages like that, if you can deploy it as a Snap, that makes a lot of sense, because it's an easy way for them to package it, to update it if there's a security vulnerability. You know, I get that people don't like that the Snap server part of it is still closed source. I don't see that being continuous. I think they'll probably open source that at some point. But even still, I honestly, I'd have to look in it, but there is a portion of Snap.
I believe Snap Store, some part of Snap Store is.
I have heard that as well.
Yeah, there's a portion that is closed source. Yeah, and that bugs people. Yeah, that bugs some people. So I think, you know, snaps are getting there. To Zeb's point, will anyone ever package a major commercial piece of software as a snap? Maybe.
Package my app.
Well, but I think in order for companies to get behind that, they need to see some sort of track record that this is going to stick around. Okay, I mean that is part of the reason why we don't have big companies making Linux applications, because which format do you use? Do you use dev format? Do you use whatever? Yeah. I mean, so in order for big companies to embrace Snap, it has to be embraced by the majority of Linux.
Yeah, you say that, but how long has Linux been around? How long have we had Slackware, Ubuntu, Debian, Arch? At least 10 years minimum, yeah? Yep. How much longer do they want us to be stable and always there? Even if they just built a Debian version.
I would say it comes down to money, Zeb. I mean, like, it always comes down to the money of, you could build a deb package, but then you would have a lot of Linux users complaining who are on Arch that, hey, I don't have this package. And they're not going to have them, or I won't say they're not going to have the money. They're not going to want to put out the money to develop 3 to 4 different architectures. They're just not.
So why do you think Snap's going to make that any different?
No, I'm not saying Snaps is going to make that different. I said if that's going to happen, Snaps is going to have to be accepted across the board. Mm-hmm. I wasn't saying at all that Snaps will be the default or will be embraced by companies, because I have no idea about that.
One thing that might make me like Snaps a bit more though is one thing I don't like about Snaps is they use they always use Adwaita, I think. And it just makes Snap packages look foreign.
They're working on it.
Yeah. They have a way to go.
So one thing that I was going to mention that
month now.
Yannick, go ahead. He's been
big pod. Just jump in.
Or not Yannick, excuse me.
Just wanted to point out when any big company uses Snap, Microsoft is exclusively or more or less exclusively using Snap to packages. You have deb versions and RPM versions, but they're more or less pushed away, and Snap is pushed in front. Especially for VS Code.
I was going to say that I have heard that they are going to add GDK support with in Snap with Ubuntu 19.10, and that might actually get me to use Snaps more. And I don't like my applications looking foreign.
Do you feel
there is a Snap that has teams, that is like team that can then pull teams from your desktop, or like at least match certain teams from your desktop, but I don't know which Snap package it is. It is official Snap from Canonical, but I don't remember which one. Let me search.
Yeah. But don't you think when you think about Snaps where they're at now, it's basically for the desktop, because you're talking about server, is really still kind of in its infant stages. It's in a growth period.
Oh, yeah.
So to say that it's going to go away, is probably premature. And it might be a pick and choose on where they put things or what they're going to integrate and that kind of thing. But it's a development that's in the works. And I think if Kopi was here, he'd be having a stronger opinion on different things as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. They're still working on getting the speed better on it too.
Do you feel Snaps are still free and open source software at this point?
Yes. Why not?
Of course.
Where do you get the open source from then if it's all packaged in a Snap?
Well, what do you get the open source if you get the debs?
Well, you can actually uncompress the debs and take them apart.
You can uncompress the Snap. It's just
compress the Snap.
Compressed file system. It's just
actually a squash fast.
Yeah, it's a squash fast. Yeah,
I'm trying to get somebody to convince me the feeling that a Snap is a little more open than a cell phone app.
Put it this way: if the Snaps weren't open source, how did Ubuntu Snap Store find that guy who put the miner in there? Because somebody at Ubuntu looked at it, people opened it up, looked at it, and thought, "What's all this nonsense?" and reported him. So it's just as open source as a deb file.
It's basically a different format that a deb file. It has same binaries inside. Everything is the same.
And it has a confinement on top of it.
I asked this question because I know other people out there have the same question.
Well, I think go ahead, Yannick.
That's because those people don't understand what a Snap is. That's all.
I don't exactly either, other than what I've heard.
And I believe it's a lack of communication from Canonical. I believe because we as in developers of apps, we tend to look at that Snaps and go, deep inside the documentation, go in the forums and etc. But users won't do that. So unless there's a clear explanation of what is an app, and because a lot of people I talk to, they tell me Snap is just like a Flatpak or another format, but they forget about the confinement the fact that by default your snap cannot do anything unless it has permission to do that. So the developer can say, okay, I want my snap to access the network, but then you can install that and say, no, I don't want this snap to access the network. And then it will never see the network. That's one example of that.
Well, some people have reservations like Serge in chat who say that system D is required for snaps.
Yes.
So that it's not universal.
No, yes, that's true. You need a system with system D, yes.
So
but then there's not that many distros left that don't use system D. Mainstream ones, Serge. I'm not talking Slackware or Gentoo or any other obscure one that you can name. I'm talking mainstream distro. Apart from something like MX, and even MX are bringing in part of Snap or part of System D into their init system so that snaps will work without you having to choose the System D version. So
I don't get why people hate System D.
Yeah, me neither.
It works. That's all I want. I just want a boot thing that works.
Because it doesn't follow the Unix philosophy. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it broke a long-standing tradition of do one thing and do it well.
Yep.
So in the old days, A would connect to B because they would both knew what they would do. And then you'd bolt on C and D and E and F and G and H. And System D come along and went, no, give me the whole alphabet. I'm putting it over here. I'm going to run all that now.
Yeah.
So they took away that interconnectivity. And you either have System D or you don't. You can't, I don't think, at least, you can pick and choose which bits of System D, unless you're going to compile your own kernel, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, somewhat you can, like MX does, but not much.
I'm just gonna say that having used Linux on the desktop for 20 years now, I lived through initd and all of the other init systems, and maybe this is a coincidence, but today's distributions with Systemd run, at least on my hardware, much better than any of those ever did. And so you know, that doesn't mean necessarily that it's a better technology, a better approach, but it's being applied better and being developed, I guess, in a more consistent way than was done in the past. I had a lot of problems in the past with init systems. I mean, that wasn't uncommon. You know, get to a certain point in the boot and it just stops and you need to go figure out, okay, what is it doing at this point at the boot process? And it was nice because, again, it is open. Initd is a lot easier to, I think, follow than Systemd maybe. But anyway, that's the observation I've made, is that everybody badmouths Systemd and says how terrible it is, yet here I am privileged enough to run these systems that just make my life so much easier than what I can remember it being all those years ago.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah. And also for security issues, it's actually easier to find when there's problems because it is interconnected and, you know, running enclosed.
I think Linux users in general are hesitant about trying new technology.
Yeah. It's
just the way it is. So it just in the same sense of the snap reservations of, well, it doesn't do this or it does this differently. It's pretty much new technology in general. It's just questioned a lot. So
yeah.
I think it's a great thing if you can use snaps, flatpaks, and messages and have a choice.
Have a choice, yes.
Because I put in snaps and they haven't, and some of them haven't worked flawlessly. Some of them one of them I had issues with no audio. So I was able to actually go and get a deb package that fixed it.
Yep.
Yeah, but
that easy?
Sometimes you have to manually add permissions for those kind of things. Audio is a weak point for snaps.
Yes, let's not bring Simon into the conversation.
It's not.
This is like the new meme, isn't it? We don't have to mention audio. We just have to say, let's not bring Simon in, and everybody knows what we're talking about. I think it's great. And just to go back, Jordan in chat says, yes, you can pick and choose bits of Systemd. So but most people don't bother with it.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's a lot more work than just picking Systemd.
Yeah.
Just saying.
To be dang, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Hey, that happens to me all the time. Welcome to my world.
I just remembered. I don't think it's that we don't like new technology. I just think it needs to evolve to, like, it's missing GDK theming, for example. For me, that's a big deal. So as soon as it has all of the features we would expect, then that's when people start to use them more.
The problem is that the natural reaction is to say, oh, it doesn't support GTK. It sucks. I don't want it. Please remove it from my system. And we don't have, as a general community, we don't have the patience to wait and to say, oh, there's a potential in that. Okay, it's not perfect yet. Just give it a chance.
Right. I agree.
Well, it's a chicken and egg, right? I mean, you have to make the decision at some point, and that's like we were saying with Debian, going with Wayland. Xorg is a great example of the legacy of a project that you cannot get away from it. It was never designed to do what it does. It's a hack upon a hack upon a hack upon a hack that works, and it's amazing that it works as well as it does. But the reality is that that's what Wayland was trying to do, was to get away from the fact that X was not the ideal, situation. And let's not also forget that Wayland's been around for what, 12 years?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe even longer than that at this point. So at some point we kind of have to say, I mean, X, right. I mean, X has its place, and maybe it keeps doing what it does, but why spend the effort and the time and the energy continuing to maintain that whenever, and I know client-side decorations, there's definitely some, philosophical differences between the two that people are having a hard time with. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think if we focused on one, it would probably allow us to get better. And we're never going to do that if we keep just saying, we'll do it in the future.
Well, to zero in on your point, Eric, Dorian in chat said it's not only new tech that worries people, but having it imposed with no choice. He thinks that's what people don't like, but I think that goes to your point where there's a fine line between imposing a technology on somebody and having to put it out there in order to test it and make it better. So, I mean, you have to push the technology forward in order to make it better. But
sometimes you have to say, okay, stop now. That's it. That's over.
Right.
Switch to the new thing or go away.
So part of it is just that, right? It's that knee-jerk reaction of, well, it's new, it's different. I don't want you to tell me what to do. But what I'd rather hear someone say is, I can't use it because of these three really valid reasons. Like this doesn't work, or that doesn't work, or it doesn't do this. Great. Okay, let's look at those things, and what can we do about those things? Maybe it's not this release. Maybe it's in the future, but let's have a focus for getting those last mile type things.
Will you stop using common sense with your arguments, dude? I mean, that is ridiculous.
I mean, I'm really excited for Wayland. We need to get rid of Xorg. It's old.
Okay, question. Why?
However,
why? Why do you need to get rid of Xorg? I keep hearing people talking about security holes and all the rest of it. Yeah, I challenge anybody in this chat to tell me one person who has been exploited because of Xorg.
Most exploits of Xorg are local machines, so they don't affect over the internet. And truth be told, if there is an exploit on local machine, it doesn't matter, because just the person to get to your machine, it's already over. Security.
So will you stop with the security rubbish that you always throw? Oh, we've got to get rid of Xorg because it's a security concern. No, it's not.
No, absolutely not.
Get real.
Just because it's an old.
It might be clunky and it might be old. It might be a real pain to maintain because there's 20 bits to it.
Because it's
well, then hurry up. 12 years, really? 12 years I've been hearing. It's like you're going to tell me there's a Linux phone coming out soon. Really?
It's called Pine phone.
Yeah,
I'll be in a Pine box before you get a Linux phone.
I don't think Zeb. I mean, Pizza. I don't think Zeb is talking to you specifically. I think he's talking in general of that argument of security issues. So
I don't care about the security issues. As long as something works, I use the same password for like 10 websites. I don't care.
That isn't good.
All right.
Right now.
It's not pizza, is it?
Pizza LN. Yeah, that'll do.
Right.
I was going to say, the reason to get rid of Xorg is, besides the security, like the security argument is kind of a weak one. I'll totally.
We all agree on that, I think.
Yep.
It's just the reason Xorg is just super bloated because of all the extra code that has been added over the years.
Okay, well, as an example, why does my X server have print code in it?
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff where like that should be the argument.
Yeah.
Not security and all the other nonsense that goes with it.
But yeah, I'd either we just need an alternative. If they took Xorg and got rid of the bloat and got rid of all the stuff that we don't need, then I'd be fine with it.
Yes, but let's also realize that making something like this is not as simple as making an app. Xorg has been around for how long, and it still has issues. Wayland has been around for how many years and still has issues. So you're not going to just all of a sudden come up with something to replace them. It's just not going to happen. So you pretty much have only a few choices, and that's it. So the dream of having something else, I mean, it's not even worth talking about.
It's going to be hard. And Xorg was built over time. That's why it's a tad bit more bloated, tad bit more code. But reality is that refactoring such a code that was built over time, probably by multiple developers, it's quite hard to be told. And on the other hand, building something like Wayland to be at least equal to Xorg is again hard, because while Xorg had time to mature, time to build all these features, Wayland has to do them all at once or very quickly, and from one feature to another. They don't get to mature like with Xorg.
Okay, so here's a novel idea for you then. That Dark One came on and immediately told me something wrong with Xorg. Take out the printing section, trim it down.
That's the problem.
There's like 3 people that actually know the entirety of the Xorg code.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So it's a hack on top of a hack on top of a hack.
And if you want to remove a hack, then you have to add another hack because you're going to break.
Basically, it becomes
all other where that hack is used as well.
Yeah.
So change management didn't work very well then.
It gets to be difficult to maintain, and I think that's where we run into situations why someone would even choose to do something like Wayland in the first place. It's not like they did it trivially. They looked at the situation with X and they said, we have all these problems that we're trying to solve, that we're essentially building wrappers around X to try to get it to work through these pipelines. And if you look at the diagram of how X actually draws an image on your screen, from the call to X to the actual output, it's pretty mind-blowing the amount of steps that it goes through. It really is. And then you compare that to what Wayland's trying to do, which is essentially simplify a lot of that. And they're not doing it again because X doesn't work. It's because they're getting requests to patch X, to fix it, make it do things that it can't do very easily. And they're like, we could either spend a year like trying to figure out how to make it do that, or let's look at what the alternative might be. In a perfect world, how could we deliver a solution as a replacement? And as you see, it's taken quite a long time, and they're not done yet.
Quite a long time is an understatement. 12 years? Come on. No disrespect to the people working at Wayland, but...
I think there are other barriers that stop Wayland from being successful, and that includes Nvidia. So, I mean, they've been working on a lot of years, but again, this is not a simple program, and they also need cooperation from other people in order to make it work.
Well, I think that you're always fighting brand new hardware that keeps coming out every single year.
Yeah, but you're fighting that regardless. That's not exclusive to X or Wayland. That's just part of having new hardware.
They also need developers to support Wayland.
And let me just say that I have the utmost respect for any type of developer, whether they're the little backstreet boys or the ones that are working for Intel or Nvidia and all the rest of it, because I couldn't code my way out of a paper bag. So, I
think my
guys are amazing.
My headline is Zeb hates Wayland.
No, if you go back, I think do some what's your predictions? My predictions are I'll still be waiting for Wayland when I'm in a pine box.
But the other thing you have to remember too, just like what Rocco pointed out about the hardware changing, or you're talking about hardware changing, I mentioned a few weeks ago, so far, and I'm going to keep saying this, knock on wood, wherever you can find some, I have not had one crash so far on my Mint since I updated the BIOS. And that is something that everybody forgets about. I don't care what distro or what you're running, how many people, the theory is if the BIOS, if everything's running fine, don't mess with it. To some extent, that's true. But if you turn around, you go on a newer hardware, or you replace a part in there or whatever, that's when you got to be looking, because I found out specifically that there were, for AMD and my Intel in there is the Kaby Lake, that there were BIOS updates. And I was even having crashes with Peppermint. And as soon as I did the BIOS updates, it fixed it. So again, the hardware has to talk to the software, and that's what these.
Joe, which motherboard do you have crashing?
Pardon me?
Which motherboard do you have crashing?
Well, it's not. Well, I've got a Gigabyte in here, but that's an ASRock in the other one. So the point is it doesn't matter what brand it is. It's, you need to, if you're going to be running these distros, you also need to check, especially if you're building a machine or whatever, or even if you're buying a machine, you need to look at what type of hardware is in there, check the BIOS updates, and see if there's any firmware, because it's the same thing with a router. How many people think about checking their routers to see if there's a firmware update, especially when the internet gets laggy or whatever? Right away, they assume it's some other problem. They don't think to look at the firmware.
I asked because I have the same problem with Mint. It'll run for about an hour or two, and then the screen and everything just locks up.
And that's exactly what I was having. And I always found it funny that they have a restart Mint applet you could put in there. But the truth of the matter is, it's so far, again, it seemed like I could run a few days or a week or whatever and not have a problem. I've been on this, 3 weeks now, 2-3 weeks at least, and I've had not one issue with this since I've done that.
So, but the difficult thing there, Joe, is they've got to come up with a better system of updating your BIOS. Yeah? We are talking about an industry where you can't get people to click the update button. So how are they going to on their PC go, which one is, hang on, F2 escape delete, F2 escape delete, F2 escape delete, F2 escape, until their screen comes up, then work out what bit, you needed to have downloaded, back into the OS, now get the USB.
Yeah. That's why I like laptops.
Yeah, but the thing is, Zab, in fairness, a lot of them, it's either, like the Dells, it's either F12 to go into the quick boot menu, or if it's F2 to go into BIOS, boom, and you're in. And the thing is,
but Joe,
you know that, mate, but you go and ask great Uncle Ned.
I get what you're saying, but it can be daunting to some extent, but it's a lot easier than it used to be. And most of these motherboards now have what they call a quick flash option on there, where you basically plug your USB in, you click on that, it finds it, you say yes, and boom, and you go and you sit back and you don't touch anything till it's done.
I agree, Joe, that it's way easier than it used to be, but there is no way that 90% of the people out there are going to update their BIOS. I wouldn't even recommend them to do it.
I want to
I want to do
messed up. And the reason why I say that is because Windows also, the 1903 has been riddled with problems, and they came out with specific BIOS patch updates for Windows 1903. And I know that for a fact because it was done in this Gigabyte board.
You're right, Joe, and I think that everybody should update their BIOS for the reasons you said. I just don't think it's practical for people to update their BIOS.
Well, I've updated.
I know, but my point is, I guess, out of all of this is right away we're quick to blame the distros or the operating systems.
I agree.
Before you do it, remember to put £500 aside for a new laptop.
Eric, what do you want to say, Eric?
This laptop right here, let me pull it out. This laptop right here, I did a BIOS update, and it actually messed up the laptop.
Oh, yeah.
That happens.
So you have to be
that's again, and I will tell you, the BIOS is a scary place to be.
Yeah.
If you don't really do your due diligence and read it, there are a lot of times too, even in these patches, there's many people will go right to the latest BIOS rather than reading it, and it'll say you have to install this version first before you put this one, or you could brick your system.
And that's why 90% of people should probably not update their BIOS.
I last updated the BIOS in 1984, and I fried the machine. I only just had the courage to do it last year.
But that's why the theory was if it's working, don't touch it. But in reality is if we're having problems, that's when you have to do it. And I took a chance and did both machines, and they're beautiful right now.
Eric, what do you want to say, dude?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to say that for all of the complaining I do about Dell and my laptop and the hybrid graphics, they're part of the Linux vendor firmware service, so LVFS.
Yes. Yeah.
I was just going to mention that.
I was testing out Zorin a couple weeks ago, and I installed it, and the software center came up and said, "Hey, you've got a firmware update." I'm like, "Great, let's do it."
Yay,
it downloads the image, it reboots your system, your boot manager boots up as a custom UEFI entry that's a firmware updater, applies the image, reboot. Fantastic. Like I mean, the fact that we even have that option on Linux, and I know that it's only certain vendors that are on board with it, but it truly is.
But see, that's exactly what I'm saying about, like, to Joe, to you, that's what we need in order for most people to be able to update.
Yeah.
They're not going to go into the BIOS and know what to do.
Well, just saying that is something that is there and actually does work, and it's not just Dell. There are some, I think Lenovo's on board.
Yep. And that's starting to come. That's where Linux is starting to progress. It's starting to come. Yeah. It's not there yet, but hopefully it will be. But at least it's getting there. It's made progress. So.
Yeah, Richard Hughes has been working really, really hard with these vendors to get this going. And the fact that he's done it in like just a few years is actually amazing.
And the fact that some vendors are already there and it's working.
Exactly.
Is showing the others that, hey, look at that, you're one train behind. So get on the train now.
Yeah. And it's
LVSFS for the win.
Yeah, and it's better than your experience in Windows, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean,
but my biggest problem is I've just spent a shed load of money on this new computer. I'm going nowhere near that BIOS other than to press.
But so Zeb, you're basing that though. I'll just be honest here, because I've been working with computers for decades as myself. I have never once had a BIOS update fry a computer. I've had them fail and I've had to fix them, but I've never had it break a system.
Send me a laptop, I'll break it for you.
But the other thing too is if you're that worried about it, some of these have dual BIOS where if you do run into an issue, you can actually push a button on the motherboard and
reset
the backup version. That's it. But about people not wanting to update the BIOS. Look, we have Windows 10, which is automatic updates, and you still see laptops with Windows 10 Home, which you can't switch off updates with 1-year-old updates. The last update being 1 year old. Why? Because people are scared and still find a way to not update the system. So
this is interesting
because they are scared they were going to grab their laptop because system update.
That and the fact
every day.
I swear Thomas is around somewhere because we're talking about BIOSes or we're talking about low latency kernel. Somebody said Debian. I mean, where is he? Come on, Thomas. Come out of the woodwork. Where are you, sir?
Yeah, but in fairness, Zeb, we're talking about the hardware because we're talking about all these problems that are coming with the distros. And again, there is a relationship between the two, and you have to make that connection because otherwise all you're doing is beating up on the distros all the time. Instead of talking about the good things, we're talking about the things that's always wrong. And a lot of times it's in fairness, not always the distro's fault.
Also, don't forget that most of the people don't even know what a BIOS is.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, and if you think of the battle that Linux has, not only the kernel developers, but every distribution trying to patch in support for Nvidia and everything else, it's an uphill battle because none of the vendors are making it easier on anyone.
There's a lot of moving parts. You're right.
It's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of changes. They're not privy to discussions that happen. They may change some fundamental way that their drivers work or something, and it's all downstream. They just have to respond to it. So I give the developers credit for being able to, and that goes back to what we were talking with Debian, where that's why it works. That's why they freeze it in and they say these things are all working at this point in time, because otherwise, as we've seen with Zeb trying to get his new hardware running and the latest Ryzen chips that are coming out, I mean, it's a moving target. It's difficult for these guys to keep up with it. And the fact, what was the last commit? 5.2 was like 500-some-thousand lines of code to the kernel. That's
Be right back.
But the thing that I love about
food.
Sorry, Peter. The thing I love about the Linux the community, though, is that they do react and they do get out there. The new Ryzen's come out and everybody's going, oh, it's not going to work on this. They've issued a patch already.
Yep.
They have fixed the fact that you were going to have problems with the 3700X processor and the 5700X graphics card. They've already put a patch out. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think it is awesome, Zeb, in the idea that they are right now giving Nvidia a run for their money, or even overtaking Nvidia in some areas for processors and stuff. And I think that is so awesome, because that is going to drive Nvidia to go further and further. And that's what we as the consumer need. We need that competition there so that they can be on their toes, both companies, and offer things that they wouldn't normally offer. You know,
look at what Intel's doing already too. They're already dropping prices too.
Yep.
Yeah. That was the fascinating thing to me, Zeb, when you were going through your install of Gentoo with Surge, the fact that he was saying, the compiler doesn't even have recognition of these second gen, Ryzen chips yet.
Yeah. So it was great that on Thursday night I sat down again with Serge and Adrian for about 3 hours, and we got it working. So we're now at a situation where I can boot into Gentoo and I've got a network connection. So next Saturday at noon we're going to be doing part 3, because you guys didn't see part 2. We'll explain what we did, and then we're going to try and get Xorg working and all of it. Yes, Xorg, not Wayland. But going back to the AMD thing, I think it is awesome, because even as you say, Nvidia had to react, and they brought out the 2070 Supers and the 2060 Supers.
Yep.
But with all their push and all their hype and everything else, they still can't touch the 2080 Ti. So, I had a little meme joke with Ryan in Telegram the other week. Was somebody apologized for having a go at AMD and said he'll have to sing the AMD mantra for 1,000 times. And I said, what's that mantra? Are we there yet?
Well, I just put a link to your YouTube channel, Zeb, so that people can go look at and follow the Gentoo story on it, because that is packed full of information. Serge is helping with that, and he's in the chat as well. So
it wasn't all that long ago. It was on the brink of extinction too, though. And look at where they're at now, in what I think is a very short period of time. The fact that this is the beauty of why having choices out there, because not only from a cost standpoint, you see now the competition is starting to drive the prices into a more affordable range, and they're driving down. And I think, just like with Linux. Now, maybe I'm wrong in this, but Windows, when you look at Windows offering free, which I still think there's some underlying, maybe a subscription or whatever, but the point is Linux came into the picture. Now, all of a sudden, they're real friendly with Linux. It's driving Windows to do things differently than what they did, or Microsoft, let's put it that way, excuse me, to do things differently on how they offer their OS and making their money through apps and other means. So the competition, when you have competition out there, it causes the competitors to actually come into a different light where they become more on a more level playing field.
Well, going back to the AMD versus Nvidia competition, you have, everybody thinks that I hate AMD, and I always tout Team Green and everything, but I do that mostly to troll Ryan. But I do love...
It's a good occupation.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. Yannick knows. He's a great troller.
That one does too.
I think he surpasses me in the trolling aspect. But, I love the fact that AMD is coming out with these things, but the problem I had with AMD is that they always promised this was going to be the release that was going to kill Nvidia.
Yeah,
this was going to be the release every time. And never does that actually happen. Okay, maybe in the processors it is starting to happen, but even in the video cards, like you said, Zeb, it is still not happening. I'm looking at the latest benchmarks, and they just are not there yet to surpass the 2080.
It depends on what you're running, though, because there are different class cards that will give more competition.
What was that, Jill?
I'm
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Joe.
I apologize. I'm getting a delay here. No, all I was saying is you have to look at what you're running, though, too, to really compare to those benchmarks, because everybody's going to have different hardware, different fields. You look at some of these content providers like Jace 2 Cents, other ones out there, Next, Ryan from Next. Anyway, Gamers Nexus. I'm talking fast here, trying to get the point out. the benchmarks, depending on what you're running, are going to show this between some of the cards. And yes, there are some that maybe NVIDIA that will still bang away.
There isn't a benchmark out there that I seen that the Ryzen or the AMD cards were beating the 2080.
You're
correct
there.
The latest one.
I don't care what
2080.
But it still comes down to using what works.
Can I just say that I really don't buy into the arms race, and I'm not going to buy a 2080 anyway, so why do I care? And also,
you should care because of the competition part, because it's only going to make them better.
That's the thing. Like, listen, I have a 970 card in my desktop system that runs perfect.
Yeah. But Eric, it's the gaming industry that has pushed the computer industry along. People's desire for that 2 extra frame rates, that 3
and I'll be there 3 years later.
That 4 extra, that's fine. That's up to you. But there are people out there who don't mind spending £1,100 on an Nvidia graphics card.
Yep.
Yeah.
And whether you think it's mad, why do people spend £120,000 on a Lamborghini? Because they can. Because they want it. But before I forget, Joe, just want to ask you, how long have we got to wait for Microsoft to start charging us for Windows? Because I've been hearing that nonsense since 2015.
All right, here's what I think, and again, maybe I'm wrong, but they have an expiration date of 2025.
Yeah, but that's expiration date because that was actually before they actually decided Windows 10 will be the last Windows.
Correct.
They already said the
Windows 10 is now a rolling release, and they haven't bothered to update it. That's all.
I understand that, but there's been, even if you watch some of the different threads where that's related, everything's going subscription now. You could see it like with all the other software. I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong.
I think the point was, Joe.
Surprised. Let's just put it that way. I would be surprised.
I think the point is it's been going subscription for the last couple years.
Yeah.
So until we actually see it, it's kind of like that whole.
But I think and where they're going to make their money is the OS will always be free. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you want Solitaire, we'll have $199 for. If you want Office, we'll have £80 a year, please. If you want antivirus, we'll have £40 a year, please. They will make their money from all the add-ons and the fact that they will eventually go, if it's not in the Microsoft software store, it's not going on Windows. I truly believe that side of it.
No, they will charge you to log in.
That's already there.
I don't believe they'll go that you can't run Win32 applications if they're not in the store. You can't run them because one of the biggest things Microsoft go for is backwards compatibility, and that means if you can't run Win32 applications, then there is no backwards compatibility. But also, what I've been hearing that they will actually go in a similar model that Linux is. You will just install a kernel, then you will install stuff onto that. That's what Windows Core.
Before you get in, Dark One, I bet you heard that on Lunduke as well, Joe.
Yeah. Trying to give me an ulcer.
Wow.
But you know what? In reality, Microsoft is data mining us too with every bit of information that's on a computer.
I was going to say, okay.
Yeah.
So is
Microsoft is
Apple.
becoming a services company.
Yes.
That is exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Microsoft is IBM.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's where the money is, and that's why they're going that way.
Exactly.
You
The
know?
cloud. All the money, all their
They're a
money.
corporation. They need
Cloud,
money.
the Azure. Yeah.
Well, look, I got to go back to the Nvidia thing here because Serge put out some nonsense here, and I just got to say, like Serge, I love you, dude, but I mean, the comment is getting a new AMD graphics card is easier than a new Nvidia card, and that is complete nonsense. I'm sorry.
That is an absolute load of bollocks.
Yeah.
You try to get the new AMD cards working, and I'm not just talking working with a working system. I'm talking working for the main reason you got them, and that includes gaming or rendering or whatever. You're going to need certain things, background services or libraries or whatever. And when you can install a PPA and get the new NVIDIA drivers, or the Ubuntu's going to supply the newest NVIDIA drivers for your card automatically. I can't see how the argument is. It's easier to install an AMD card and get it working. It's just not.
I'm still on GTX 7. So what does that tell you?
What's up, Matt?
I was going to say, How many times do we have to update Mesa? How many times do you have to have the latest kernel? How many times do you have to do this? How many times do you have to do that? Oh, it might work in Zeb's case. How's Threadripper working on Linux for you there, Zeb?
Threadripper's working great.
But you know what? We're not addressing. We're talking about all these dedicated cards. I've got basically an integrated Intel machine back there, and I had screen tearing, and I found a video to fix it. So it's not just dedicated cards that have their issues with it. I mean, video has problems anywhere you're doing it. The reality of it is Linux has some beauty to be able to fix these things easy enough if you take the effort to do it. There's always help out there, and that's why I'm on Linux. And quite frankly, I don't really give a rip about Windows other than for the 2 little tasks I need it for. I'm more worried about it because my wife uses it more than anything else.
So my dig wasn't on the fact that there is an arms race. And Zeb, I agree with you. I mean, I think that does drive innovation forward, and it needs to be there. What my point is that AMD at least doesn't charge the same level. Like, they've always sort of recognized, like, yeah, okay, we're not going to give the same performance, and therefore it's going to be a little less expensive. Like, I'm okay with getting an RX card or getting a lesser card for a lesser price that's going to meet my needs. I'm not going to play things at 4K or 1440p, or I'm not going to, I'm happy that AMD is there, because without them, really, there wouldn't be that competition.
And AMD, is it an FX 5700X? It's like £380. It's ridiculously cheap.
Yeah.
It's like a third of the price of a 2080.
Yeah, and you're getting 85 to 90% of the performance, right?
No, but it is competitive with the 2060. And that is huge. The 2060 is priced, a lot higher, and in some instances 2070, but most of the game benchmarks are 2060. So
the argument used to be that AMD was cheaper because it was garbage, but that's not the argument anymore.
No.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't hate AMD. I would disagree, though, Eric, that I think that they are very high in their expectations of what their performance they're going to deliver.
Definitely.
And maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's the press doing that as well,
marketing.
somewhat.
But there's a lot of that.
Fanboys doing.
It's marketing.
Though that all of their performance and all of their numbers that they're getting and they're putting out is in a confined, hermetically sealed computer lab with one guy turning up the wattage and another guy pouring on the liquid helium. And look what speeds we've got. Who's going to do that in the real world? It was a bit like, I think, when Intel brought out their 5 gigahertz processor.
The 39 core.
It's not going to happen. You have to go to people like overclockers, where there's a guy, funnily enough, he's called Big Ben. And he's an ex-bodybuilder, but he's a world champion overclocker. And he achieved it by, he's got a computer that's completely open. He has one man pouring liquid helium over the processor chip, another person pouring helium over the CPU chip, while he's fiddling about on a computer tweaking the things, and they get these world records.
I want that. I want that to combine my applications.
Yeah, can you imagine it? Hang on a minute, I'm just going to install Gen 2. Let me go and get the liquid helium. Oh, over my hand. Sorry.
I do love the fact that the new Ryzen. So I agree. So on the graphics front, they're not quite there with Nvidia, but on the Intel side, the fact that the AMD chips are, I think they're a better value, because you're getting both strong single core performance that is really caught up, and you're getting the multi-core, multi-threaded performance that Nvidia just doesn't really focus on, because they're so focused on that single core performance. So those the latest ones that have come out, that's really exciting. I'm looking forward to my next desktop system probably being based around a chip like that.
Well, maybe it will force NVIDIA to worry about that kind of stuff, and I think that's the best part.
It is. Example, this is a Ryzen 7 2700, I think U or whatever their mobile CPUs are. My Elite book that is from 2012, if we're going by strictly benchmarks, actually gets better benchmarks than this. And this is the newer system. So benchmarks or whatever you want to make.
Oh,
It won't get good benchmarks now, I can tell you that.
Minecraft doesn't count.
Give it to me. I take broken systems for free.
But benchmarks are I hate the synthetic stuff because it's not like
Right.
oh they're so controlled and controlled because literally at the end of the day is look, feel, how does it operate? Can I do the stuff that you as a user need to do? And like my if we're going to go by stupid synthetics, my Cinebench is 11,000 on the Elite Book and it's 8,000 on the Ryzen. I don't care because the Ryzen still runs perfectly fine, does everything I need it to.
Not anymore.
Luckily not. That was just the box.
No, here's another example, or you forget about everything. DT built a new machine, and he's got this mega beast, right? We're both in ballistic overkill one night, and we're both getting the exact same little glitchy or hesitations because of the server. So again, it's another one of those moving part scenarios. You could have the biggest, baddest machine. I've got a Ryzen 1600 sitting here with a 6-year-old video card in it. And yet we both were experiencing the same kind of little video glitch until it leveled out. After you're on the server a while, it seems like it eventually finds its sweet spot, levels out, and then we were fine.
Well, you'll always have that, Joe. I mean, but I don't want it to be on my end. So I'd much rather buy the better machine.
Yeah. But that's my point. You know what he built for a machine, which is very similar to yours, and we were both experiencing the same thing. They're two different animals.
Speaking of machines, can I rant? I mean, Zeb, you ranted for a couple minutes. Can I rant for a minute here?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Okay, so
I've got more in me if you want it as well, but go on.
I think that was awesome. No,
your rant.
I have to rant here because, I bought a computer from CyberPower PC, and I used to build all my machines, pick out all the parts, so I knew every piece was going into it. But this time there was different circumstances involved, and I won't go into those circumstances, but there were different circumstances, and we decided to go CyberPower. The company was actually pretty awesome through the whole process of everything, except for this time that I needed support. And that's where I have a problem. So in this build, when I built it on the site, I placed it for a Nvidia 2080. Doesn't say what brand, doesn't say, specs on it, just says an Nvidia 2080. So it comes and it is an EVGA 2080 with RGB lighting, which was absolutely fantastic because EVGA is the company that I always buy the video cards from anyway. So they have an excellent track record with me over the years. So I was elated that this was going to be my card. I go to plug in the monitors, and on the back, the connections, the DisplayPort connections, are loose. So, I'm looking at them, and I try to plug them into the other DisplayPorts on the card because it has multiple ones, and all of them seem somewhat loose. So it's to the point where if I touch the monitor cable at all, the display goes off.
Oh, that's not good.
So it's not good. So I contact support, and they said, okay, well, they immediately said, we'll get you another one. But they wanted me to send back the card to them. And I said, look, this is a production machine. I can't be doing that. Yeah. So long story short, we worked out a deal where they sent me a card before I sent the old one back. What they sent me was a Gigabyte 2080 that was, in my opinion, inferior to the EVGA with no RGB lighting or anything. Yeah. And I contacted support and I said, look, this is the computer I bought. It came with an EVGA 2080. I think I should have got a replacement EVGA 2080.
Yeah, exactly.
And they pretty much said, you're out of luck. Because on the website, it states, in small print somewhere, I guess, that stock is subject to change for whatever they have in the warehouse. So basically what they're saying is they sent me an equivalent 2080, even though the EVGA probably cost $50 to $100 more because of the things, because of the RGB lighting and everything else. So they sent me, and I really have no other recourse. I mean, I was on the phone with tech support talking to them, and I'm basically telling the guy, and he's not really being helpful. Like, he's just explaining
Did you
things.
say, do you know who I am?
No, I did not. But what I'm saying is, am I wrong in thinking that if you gave me a system with an EVGA R2080, shouldn't I get a replacement of that product?
Equal value. Yeah.
They should have those in stock for that reason.
Well, apparently they don't have any of those in stock left, so they sent me a gigabyte one.
That's not your problem.
I am like,
so send me an Asus one, please.
Then they should buy you a new EVGA.
I said,
did you keep both cards?
No, I did not. I just sent the EVGA back because the EVGA one is not going to work for me because obviously but the connections are bad.
I would have kept both of them until
you got your EVGA back, and if
sell
it on eBay, £600. Done.
I think it is what it says on the receipt. If it says specific model, then they have to send you. If it just says 2080, then
that's what it says. The 2080.
Yeah, and that's what they.
And I think the technical part of that, Big Pod, is correct. The technical part of it. Yeah, the technical part.
Even though it's scammy tactic, that's the law.
Yeah, I mean, but the technical part is, okay, they supplied a 2080, but for customer service, for the customer that you supplied a computer, that paid for a computer from you and bought one from you, that's terrible customer support, in my opinion.
And guess what?
CyberPower has bad customer support.
Well, and are you ever going to buy another one?
Never, not from CyberPower.
The knife is anybody who's watching Biddle.
Yep.
So that's ridiculously bad PR.
Well, that's the other thing I was just going to say is there's a lot of people that have actually achieved things, talking about content providers, that have done a rant video because of something like that. And it's not necessarily just a bash on the company, but it's to forewarn consumers or whatever from their experience. And many times it'll turn it around and they'll rectify it because they don't want that.
But that's not fair. That's not fair. Just because someone has a voice and can put pressure on them, that means all their other customers are still getting shafted.
Well, I know that, but it does sometimes change the way they. And you're correct. It's not fair. But the reality is if that's what it takes them to get,
But I'm not here to rant about it, Joe.
Moving forward,
Joe, I'm not here to rant about it so that I get a new EVGA card.
No, I know.
I'm here to rant about it because it's just plain wrong. Yeah, it's just plain wrong that you do that to somebody.
Tell people on Twitter, they will listen.
But somewhere along the line, something's got to happen to make a change. And unfortunately, if a public venue is the only, I'll give you an example. It's a different analogy. Home remodeling or home experience, you got something done on there, you have a bad experience with a contractor. A lot of people get left in the wind, or a contractor walks away with their money or whatever. They'll go to the media, they have this 7 on your side or 27 on your side or whatever, and then the news media gets involved, they give them a black eye, and all of a sudden they're made whole. It's unfortunate that it has to go that way, but a lot of times that's what it takes in today's world. But it does move a company forward in doing maybe a better job sometimes too, even though it's a bad way to go about it, or not a preferable way to go about it.
But does it not? But does it really? I mean, the company can just, they could have, if they watch Biddle, maybe they can send Rocco a new card. But that's not going to accomplish anything if they don't change their whole business thing and do that for everybody.
Well,
and
I
not just
understand
for
that,
Rocco.
Again, it's not just Biddle specifically. So let's say, again, I'm talking like the comparison I used. There was a Kerry Holzman. He had an experience with Newegg that went really south. He was buying these specific models of whatever, I can't remember what item it was at the time. And he was getting bad, which is happening with a lot of times with Amazon, or where you're buying these parts where it almost seems like they're doing a bait and switch. They'll have somebody that will buy something, they'll return it, and then they're selling you something as new, and in fact it's an open use item or whatever. And so he went on and he said, this is highly unacceptable, and I've been buying from them for years. I don't want to damage that relationship, but I feel they've damaged it with me. And I really wish that they would change the way they're doing things because it's not fair to consumers. Next thing I know, boom, they made it correct. And then he did a follow-up video and said, hey, in fairness, yes, I had this experience. I wasn't happy about it, but they made it right. And it has changed to some extent on how Newegg does things with their customers.
But it's also very specific to the company, because when I bought this new PC here, I bought it with two blue or whatever color RGB strips. And when I got it here, I mean, the graphics card is RGB, the fans are RGB, the memory's RGB. So at the company, the guy who was building it, there was so much RGB on there that he thought it was my strips were on there already. I phoned them up. 2 weeks later, I got a £20 credit back on my credit card because of the no, and a £5 at Amazon apology.
Nice.
That's customer service.
That's the
Well, it's the same thing with all the other hardware. You have an i3, i5, i7, like Rocco said at his point. I know he's getting tired of this, but the reality is when somebody buys something, it's just i3, i5, i7, but it doesn't say which one because there's multi-tiers. There's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different levels of those processors. Sorry, Rocco. I'll let it go. He's like,
well, I have one question because Easy Nick's in the chat is saying, well, this is just what it is. It's the fine print. When you bought the system, was there any mention of the fact that the card was of either a particular brand or that it had the RGB lighting, like as part of the?
No, I don't believe there was. It was just a RTX, RTX Nvidia 2080. Okay. So, like I said, technically, for technical terms, they're not wrong as far as they supplied a 2080, but for customer service. And for going the extra mile and doing what is right, the customer should get a replacement for what they originally got.
Yes.
So, all I'm saying is, if you are buying from CyberPower, you better be careful of how you read the fine print and what exactly it is you're getting. So,
I believe CyberPower also got a bad press already by Linus Tech Tips when they were doing that secret shopper Vita series, and at least CyberPower already fallen off after the first Vita. So
every other way of doing business with CyberPower was excellent, from buying it to getting it to whatever. This particular way was terrible. Sorry. So
next time you can build your own, Rocco.
I could have built my own this time, but I just. Like I said, there were circumstances that I needed to buy it from them.
So much easier to buy out of the box.
Yeah.
I'm too old for that.
Warranties for 10 different pieces.
Yeah, buy this from here, that from there, that from there. You put it all together, and all of a sudden it goes dead in the water. Right.
Yeah.
It now fails.
I did that many times when I was younger.
Yeah. 20 years ago, maybe, not now.
Yeah. Been
and
there,
especially
done that.
with a company as good as PCSpecialist.co.uk.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
PCSpecialist.fr. They're also awesome. But that's the same company, actually.
Yeah.
All right. Really rant over, and basically the show's over. That's
time up. Time to go to bed.
All right. Everybody gets a last word. Tony, last word.
Thanks for doing this, Rocco. The European edition is a totally different feel to the American one. I love both. I'll probably be on later for the other one. But it's good that you do this, and it's nice to see some different faces in this one, as well as some of the regulars that are in the other one. So keep going. It's good news.
Awesome. Big Pod, last word.
Thank you, Rocco, for having this Europe edition. It is awesome to be up at this hour and talk with you guys. And at some point, actually more loose and more easygoing than American edition.
Well, I think there's more time in this edition than there is with the American. Well, I mean, because there's so many more people. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
It allows for more
people
things
to review the
yeah. Eric, last word.
So I'm going to try to ruin that and publicize BDLL edition, Europe edition a little more. So this is the 6th one, right? And so it's not like it's been around as long as BDLL has. So I've been doing some things on the website, and I am making mention of it and trying to put it out there a little more. I like that it is a smaller group and it's an easier conversation. Sometimes BDLL, I mean, we're on 2 pages now in Zoom. So it can be a little difficult to get a word in, but I would like to see more European participants.
Yep.
So if we publicize it and let people know ahead of time, then maybe there will be, I mean, I'm happy to be here, but frankly, like if we had more Europeans, I think that would be a better representation of what this is supposed to be. So
in fairness, Popey and Wimpy and English Bob are usually here.
Yeah,
true. True.
Yeah.
But and so this is a smaller group. You're right, Zeb. But so hopefully, we can grow that a little more and just see some more people, and not to a point where it's uncomfortable. But I think it'll always have a slightly different flavor than the American edition, and that's a good thing. That's why there are two.
Yep.
So,
Joe, last word.
Thank you very much for the show and indulging me today. I know I was a little more vocal on some things, but I love, and Zeb as well too. I love healthy discussions. I really do. And the beauty of this too is everybody has an opinion. And when you have discussions like this, a lot of times too, you're thinking one way coming into it, and then when you hear another side of things, sometimes your opinions change. And I think that's the beauty of this. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking hardware, Linux, or whatever, and just the variety of people are here. But again, thank you for the show, and thank you for indulging me today.
Jill, last word.
Oh, and yes, thank you, Rocco, for the European edition. Otherwise, I couldn't be as involved with Big Daddy Linux because of our main show, Linux Gamecast, is at the same time
right?
as the version. And I have to be with my community, and we play games and everything. So, and so I've got to be there for that. So thank you so much. And I actually want to thank each person that came on, because you guys are all wonderful. So Rocco, Tony, Big Pod, Eric Adams, Joe, Zeb, Yannick, Dark One LTG, Joshua, Pizza Dude.
Yeah, Pizza Dude. Well, you're always welcome, Jill.
Okay, thank you.
Zeb, last word.
Well, I want to take the last word this time round to advertise something that myself, English Bob, Sudo Reboot, Yannick, Martin Wimpress, and Popey, and a whole host of other people will be turning up to. And I'm just putting the link into the YouTube chat, and that is OggCamp October 2019. It's the Saturday the 19th and Sunday the 20th of October. It's going to be in Manchester. There's the website. If you're in the UK or in Europe and you can get across there, come along. I understand it is an absolutely amazing place to go. So I'm going to start advertising it more because I want loads and loads of people to turn up. So OggCamp October in Manchester. Come along if you can get there.
Maybe I'll fly over. No. Okay.
Yay! Hey, I'm going to serve next year, so you can come to OggCamp this year.
Okay. Last word, Yannick.
Well, I was going to advertise for OggCamp, but Zeb did that. I'm not technically in Europe, but thank you for having me on Big Daddy Linux Europe. I usually can't make it because of family reasons, but this week my schedule was clear, and I was very happy to be there. Thank you, Rocco, for doing this and the main show. And I hope to be able to come back next month.
What's your latest episode, dude, on your podcast of interviewing people?
Oh, well, the last one was Robbie.
Wendy?
No, yes, Wendy. Yeah, Wendy was the last one. I don't have anything in my pipeline yet. So if you are a maintainer of an open source project, yeah, I know Zeb. I need to record an interview with you. But if you're a maintainer of an open source project and you want to be interviewed for Hacker Public Radio, then you can contact me on one of the on the Big Daddy Linux group, for example. So, or actually, if you just want to talk about Linux or anything else, I'd be happy to interview you.
Very nice. Matt.
As always good to be on either the European edition or the regular edition of a BDLL. Rago, always appreciate the time and effort you put in, along with Zeb and everybody else from the community. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the opinions on Debian are for the regular Americans this coming up. Other than that, Yannick is probably the bigger troll.
Yannick is the bigger troll. We'll agree to that. Joshua, last word.
Hello. So for those who didn't notice, because you guys were talking about stuff that I kind of wasn't really involved in, and I was saying stuff, and then you guys went on through conversation. I'm not mad at you guys. I'm actually proud of you guys. You know how to do a conversation. But my last words are, thank you for having me on the European edition. I hope you all enjoyed my cringiness of Dr. Random and watching Rocco shake his head to my words. As he just did. And enjoying hearing the drama over my swimming. Okay, real last word. I'm sorry. So, for those who don't know me, like Jill, Joe, Yannick, I am making an Ubuntu remix called Ubuntu Cinnamon. And for those in the chat wondering what's going on with that, I'll tell you it's a custard fluck right now. So, yeah, I'll tell you more later. And besides that, again, it was nice having me on here. And I'll see you guys next month with the side of Annoying Rocco. Bye, guys.
All right, that's going to do it for the Europe edition. We will be back in a few hours, 3 to be exact, less than 3 hours for the regular Biddle edition. But I do want to make sure I thank Eric Adams for all of the work he's been putting into the website. Go check it out. Not only the website, we have a new discourse forums that he put up, and it is absolutely awesome. You can go check that out as well. But until next time, long live Linux.
Adams.
Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.